Tell me who rock, who sell out in the stores. You tell me who flop, who cop the blue drop, who jewels got blocks, who's mostly Dolce down to the blue drop. The same old pimp, Mace, you know ain't nothing changed but my limp. Can't stop till I see my name on the blimp. Guarantee a million sales, pull a level up. You don't believe in Harlem World, nigga, double up. We don't play around, it's a bet, lay it down. Niggas didn't know me 91, bet they know me now. I'm the young Harlem nigga with the Goldie sound. Can't no PD, niggas hold me down.
To some of us, it's taboo. To some, it's better preparation. A very good evening to you all, ladies and gentlemen. Today's topic is very, very interesting. We are talking about wills. It is officially a National Wills Month. I didn't know. You know, Nikki is so amazing. Before I go any further into this detailed topic, it's a very technical one again. Welcome to the Money Time Podcast. Once more, episode 11, I think. I'm not alone. My name is Zweli. I'm also with my co-host, Nikki Frelinghouse. Mrs. Frelinghouse, how are you doing today?
Evening, viewers. I'm fantastic, Zweli. I'm so pleased that spring has finally arrived after one of the most coldest winters I've ever experienced in Johannesburg.
Please don't remind me. Towards the end, it was worse. You know, I got sick. And people may wonder what has happened. There was a time where we couldn't even push one of the episodes. It took us very long. It's because of I was very ill for like 3-4 weeks because of flu. But thank you so much, Nikki, for also another interesting and also very technical topic. We're talking about wills. And what comes into my mind as I was thinking about the topic is that wills are not, you cannot avoid them. Like, that's what came to me. They are not, you cannot avoid in the sense. You can deny or ignore the fact that you have to do it. But once whether you are alive or you pass on, there's somebody who has to take that responsibility of now having to distribute your asset or have somebody taking them away, all those things. So it's something that you can never avoid.
Correct.
So you also are teaching us, some of us, well, maybe a lot knows, that it's National Wills Month. It's September. You know, I've celebrated September for quite some time now. All I know is heritage when it comes to September. But then it's Wills Month. What is this all about, the Wills Month, Nikki? What is it about?
So, Zweli, viewers, Wills Month is something that the insurance industry has come about. It has come from there where they've decided that September will be the month during which they will create awareness around the importance of having a will. According to statistics in South Africa, currently about 80% of the South African population does not have a valid will in place. Very high percentage.
I don't think I'm part of that percentage.
I hope you're not.
Well, I'm pro. Well, let's leave it for some other time. This part, I'm probably part of that. But you know, even before you, Nikki, like before you talked about this topic, it's something that, you know, I really had to listen to my partner, and we spoke deeply about such, and we realized how important this is, not for the sake of, you know, just writing it, but also just to be prepared for the West or for the future. Because, you know, as you are teaching us, as we are moving with the podcast, I also learned that it's not just about money, assets, but it could also be about your kids. Should something happen to you, those things. And, that also really, really got to me to say, that's how extensive wills are. They're not just about monetary value and these materials like houses and all that, but also you also are detailing what you'd like to see happen when you pass on with your kids, should you and your partner maybe be in an accident, those things. So it's a very, very good exercise that one can try and do, not because they think they're going to die, because I know. That's why when I started, I said to some it's taboo and to some it's preparation. Because I know that I also, when a person asks about a will, first thing that comes into my mind is, are you thinking I'm going to die very soon? And we all always think that we have time. So my next question is, who needs a will and why is it important to have a will, Nikki?
So, Zweli, as you've mentioned, we touched a little around wills in our previous podcast. Just to add to what you've mentioned earlier on, a will is for any person who has possessions of value. So this could be anything from a property, land, a vehicle, cash in the bank, items of huge monetary value. For example, it could be a ring from your grandmother that not only has sentimental value, but it is an antique which has appreciated in value. So in a nutshell, it's just possessions of value.
I think most of the 80% that you were talking about does have these in possession. So it is concerning, but also it could be that there isn't enough. I know that these initiatives are being done to create awareness, but I don't think there's enough education around the importance of these things. And even the people that are selling them, they will come across as if they're just wanting you to have a will and have commission at the end of the month. They even when you get a call from a person, you don't get the sense that it's really important for you to have a will, but you get the sense that it's important for them to sell you the will as a product, So coming to that, my question is, how much does it cost a basic will plan, or I don't know, what is it even called?
Okay, so it's generally referred to as a will or a will and loss testament. And Zweli, wills are free. They're offered by banks, they're offered by insurers, and banks and insurers do not charge for their wills. They are free. Attorneys, however, also draft wills, and depending on the attorney that you're using, they may provide you a will at no cost, but most attorneys tend to charge a fee for the will that they draft for you, and the fee depends on the complexity of the will that they draft.
Okay. All right. This question that I'm going to ask, it's a bit tricky, because you could be thinking I'm talking about the free will in the Bible, but I'm literally asking about the cost. Is there such a thing as a free will? Like you've just said, wills are free. Because the question that may come, and I also had that in my thinking, because I remember, I think I got a call from guys that are working with Discovery. Then I had a couple of products with Discovery, and they offered this. And for me, it felt like there are hidden costs that I'm not aware of. And now this thing is suddenly being presented as if it's free. So is there something called a free will, like literally free will, not God's free will.
Okay, Zweli. I mean, a good question, a very valid question. And, marketers are really amazing in terms of how they market or put forward products, right? They don't tell you about the fine print. So I think this type of question speaks about the fine print, right? So yes, banks and insurers do offer wills for free. However, where they make their money is when a person passes on, they become the executor or co-executor of the estate. And the executor fees right now is 3.5% of the gross value of the estate. This is excluding VAT and any other taxes applicable when it comes to winding up an estate. So that is where the bank or insurers make money.
So I'm assuming if I have 10 rands, 3 rands, about 3 cents is already gone to them.
Correct.
You said, okay, it's not too bad if you think about it, especially if they are going to do this thing you trust, because I think you are also buying the trust there that this will be executed fairly and according to what you wanted it to be, unlike, relying on your relative. Because the other thing that probably people are thinking of is that, but I can actually write my own will and put it somewhere, and somebody will execute my wishes when I'm no longer here. And we're dealing with human beings here, and it's not as simple as it sounds. You might even entrust your partner or your brother or your mother to do it, and they will, and you only to find that you are no longer there. You don't have powers to change their behavior because you are no longer there. So yeah, it is a very tricky one. But then, Nikki, what happens if?
Sorry, just
Yes.
to come in there, the executive fee is also governed by legislation, right? But it is a fee that can be negotiated. So you find that certain banks, like banks tend to have different tiers, right? Depending on how much you earn and the banking package that you have as well. So a lot of banks, depending on what type of tier you on, they may say to you, Zweli, listen, we are willing to negotiate and drop down the executive fees if we are executor on your estate, right? And then also in terms of the duties and responsibilities of the executor, to your point, if an executor is an independent third party, like a bank or an insurer or an attorney, you've got a far greater chance of your wishes being fulfilled based on what your will says, and also having them do it with honesty, integrity, and transparency, because there will be some sort of recourse should they not execute according to legislation or what their role and responsibilities will be. On that matter as well, a lot of clients ask, or a lot of clients say, but what if I don't want the bank to be the executor or the attorney? Can I not have my spouse or my child? And the question I often ask them is, has your spouse or your child been an executor on an estate before? And most people look at me confused as to why I'm asking this question, right? So the reason why I ask this is, if you've got no experience being an executor of an estate, why would you then put someone like a spouse or a child? Remember, you're in a situation where you've passed on now. Your spouse or your child is dealing with the grief of your loss. And now they've got to on a daily basis, try and work on the execution of an estate. I've seen it in the line of work that I do. It's not easy at all. And to give you an example, sometimes clients ask me, Nikki, would you be the executor of my estate? And I say to them, with absolute respect, I will not even be the executor on my own mom's estate or my siblings or any close friends, leave alone a client, because as much as I'm a certified financial planner, I'm not experienced as an executor.
I understand. And to me, I'm thinking of a very emotional executor, because at that time you're emotional and you're not thinking straight. You probably now say this person has got maybe 2 kids outside and they're part of the will, and you never like them that much. You are going to be very emotional and not execute the way you should. Anyways, sorry about that. I didn't mean to drag it to that, but it could really happen. So, Nikki, because most of us do have these positions like bank accounts with money, houses that we own, cars, and I'm just thinking, what happens if you die without a will and you have all these things?
So,
And
Zweli,
there isn't an executor, and you have these things. What really happens?
okay, so Zweli, what I'd like viewers to be aware of is that a will becomes your voice when you are no longer here, right? And if you don't have a will in place, then your wishes will not be carried out, right? So in South Africa, if you have valuable possessions and you pass away without a will, your estate will be distributed according to the laws subject to interstate succession. So this is linked to the Interstate Succession Act of South Africa, and it basically governs the distribution of assets when someone passes away without a will or a valid will. So basically what it means is the state will apply this law and they will decide who gets what in terms of the assets you leave behind in your estate. And there's a hierarchy in terms of who they start with from a distribution perspective. So for example, you could have a car, a house, money in the bank, you're married, but you've decided you do not want to leave these assets or possessions to your spouse. You'd rather like to leave it to your parents, right? Now, these are your wishes, your intentions, but you pass away without a will, right? Then your estate will now be subject to the interstate succession law, right? The applicable legislation, and they'll look at it, and they're not going to be aware of your wishes, saying that you'd like these assets or possessions to go to your parents. They will first start off by distributing a portion of the assets to your spouse because you were legally married, right? So this is just one of the examples. So if you have a clear idea in terms of what you'd like to leave behind to who, you can't expect people to guess or know. The only way anyone would know what you're leaving behind to whom is when you draft and put a will in place.
I think that makes sense, Nikki. Because, I think one important thing that I just took is that will is your voice when you're no longer around. And what you wish for, because I think we internalize our will. We like, I wish I'd like for my house to be taken by my wife, my 2 cars to be taken by my son, but no one will really know what you wished for if you did not put it down. I think this is a very, and maybe we should look at it this way. I'm not trying to influence people, but I won't be around. So if I wrote a will, I won't feel bad because I've written it and I'm gone. Because people who are remaining behind will be like, this guy is cruel. Zweli, how can you do this to me? You did not even leave me anything. So yeah, maybe it's time we really stop. Because I think also, Nikki, this is my thinking is that the reason why also, which I'm not condoning, I'm actually trying to encourage people to actually start exercising this thing of doing wills, making their own wills while they are still alive. But it's about thinking about what are the others are going to say if I don't leave this thing for this one? And now, let me tell you straight, you won't be here to feel that. You'll be quiet. And if in the spiritual world you are able to see this, it's going to be hectic. You're like, no, that's not what I wanted. And no one is hearing you. Anyways, let's carry on. We obviously coming to the last few questions, Nikki, but this is very interesting. And maybe also this is something that will help a lot of people, because the question is, how often do I have to revise my will? Like, do I look at it quarterly, yearly? What would be the best way
Okay.
to revise?
I'm going to give you two responses. One's going to be a straightforward response, and then I'm going to give you a second response, which is humorous, but I'm certain it will also bring my point across. So the straightforward response is we say to clients whenever there are new trigger events that take place in your life. So this could be things like a divorce, you know, and maybe in your previous will, you had your former spouse as the person you'd like to leave all your assets to. Now you get divorced. So, of course, it would, unless you still want your ex-spouse to inherit, then you leave your will as is. But in most cases, people change their wills whenever there's a life-changing event. So divorce is one of it. The other is if you're getting married. Perhaps you had a will when you were single. Now you're getting married. You've got a spouse. It would make sense to maybe include them within your will. Other trigger events would be the arrival of a child. You'd want to make provision for your child in your will. Also, as you change assets, for example, in your will, you may have started off with the primary residence, and as you move along, you may purchase a second property or a holiday home, or you may purchase another vehicle, or you may have started 2 additional businesses, and all these things are not in your will. So whenever life-changing events happen, I'd say have your will revised. So that's a straightforward response, right? The more humorous one, but it will still get the point through, is to say, for example, I've got a will in place and I've got my husband as a person who will inherit my estate should anything happen to me. So now it doesn't mean that every time I have a fight with my spouse, I go to the bank and say, bank, I want you to now change. I'm now leaving behind the estate to my mother. And then a few days thereafter, I have a fight with my mother and I go back to the bank and I say, I want to change from my mother and I want to leave all my money now to the SPCA, right? So the point I'm trying to bring across is you can't chop and change according to, you know, if you have a fight with someone or you know, you have a little argument, you change it when there's big life-changing events.
Yeah, no, great minds think alike. You know, as you were explaining it, the first part, I kept on smiling because in my, I just thought life-changing. You really have to understand what that means. So if it happens that you wake up one day for the first time, your partner does not greet you, you cannot go like, what? He did not greet me. No, that's a good one. But I think as fun it is, as it is, Nikki, it really makes a lot of sense. I'm sure even the points would be like, what's going on? Are you really trying to play us here? Because you are right. As human beings, we sleep and we turn, and it doesn't mean that every time there's something that's not going right, you are now going to go to run to the bank or to your lawyers and change the will just because there's a misunderstanding. So please, listeners and viewers, you got it right here. It's life-changing events, and that doesn't mean fights and arguments. Life-changing, getting married, a kid, buying new property. those are life-changing events. Okay, I think that was the second last question. My last one would be, I'll start because I want you to be the last person to speak. I just generally on this, my view is that you've already instilled this through the other podcasts, Nikki, that it's very important to, especially around finance, it's always important to be prepared for the future. And it's not just about money, but it's about the things that you have in position, things of value, or things that you value. And we all have things that we value. And therefore, it's important that we know exactly how we want these things to be distributed or to be treated when we are no longer around. And I think we all are aware of the people that are around us. You know who can take care of what if you are no longer here. You really know already that if I to give my friend my car, it won't last. Already, because you relate with these people and genuinely your wishes. Because I think also that's why you have other people, like rich people will tell you, I'm going to give my 50% of my belongings to charity, and then I'll distribute the other 50% amongst my family members. And it's a rich person that is told. It's because it's not about, entitlement for those who are around you. It's about you, what you wish for. Because also, the reason why sometimes we are not able to live a long living legacies, it's because we want to think narrow. And for our legacy to continue, wills also can guide that. Because if you know that I only have a wife and one child, and I'm forced to now distribute 50%, but you know very well that this is going to be the end of it, then why are you doing it like that when you want it to carry on? Then maybe look at the possibility of taking 20% to somebody else that they are responsible and they can look after this thing. Those are the things that I'm thinking about, that it's very important for us to exercise this as a nation, as a people of this country, so that we are able to have legacies or to have continuity in what we had started. Because it's really painful to see some of the things that really happens, whether it's through wills or not. But Nikki, I'm sure you've heard of stories where people received a lump sum of money, whether it was by will or not, but 2 months down the line, that money is gone. The parents were owning businesses, they died because of an accident, and everything was written under your name. And your excuse is that you were too stressed to handle it. Then you are not fit for that. And your parents probably knew that this one is weak, but they left everything for you. So I think it's very important for us to also look at who can handle what, and genuinely be honest with yourself if you really want to see continuity, whether you are in the spiritual realm looking down and you're looking at your company and who is running it, all those things. But all I'm saying is that it doesn't have to be your family members all the time that should take over the things that you own. Especially if you want continuity, it makes sense to have people who are close to you, but it's not always the case. Yeah, those are my thoughts just for this. It was a very interesting one, and on a serious note, I think this is one thing that can really help a lot of us. Thank you so much, Nick, on this.
It's a pleasure, Zweli. So just a few things from my side in parting. Um, one of the areas I didn't spend a lot of time discussing today is around wills in relation to minor kids, right? Now, apart from having a will just to indicate the distribution of your assets, the other important aspect of a will, especially when you have minor kids, is who will have guardianship of your child in the event of a partner passing away, or partners passing away simultaneously, or in the event of you being a single parent. Now that becomes very important, because you can't make an assumption that if I'm a single mom, for example, I can't make the assumption that my mom or my family members will now step in and start raising my minor child, right? Because they could have their own kids, they could have other financial commitments, and they may not be willing to take my child in. Then what happens to my child? You know, so these matters become really important. And also, Zweli, you know, you touched on abuse of funds or mismanagement of funds, where someone inherits, in your example, like a child, and because they were going through stress, they weren't able to manage their funds, right? So an important aspect of a will, especially where there's minor kids, will speak to what would happen to the inheritance of minor kids. And a will triggers, and I'm sorry to get technical here, is what's called a testamentary trust, which is set up for the benefit of the minors, and it will dictate the age, the date, or at what age the trust will cease. So this is just more technical details, which your bank or your certified financial planner or your attorney will discuss with you in detail when you're drafting a will. Another area that I did not touch on today as well is the concept of estate planning. So apart from putting a will in place, it's nice to say in your will, okay, my spouse must get the house, my child must get the car, etc. But if there's no liquidity in your estate to pay executive fees, estate duty fees, and whatever fees are applicable for the winding up of your estate, your executor will have no option but to start selling assets in your estate to raise capital to wind up the estate. So you may have seen, as you're driving around, there's a lot of boards on poles, and it says deceased auction, right? So this means someone has passed on, and because there isn't sufficient liquidity in the estate, the executor is selling off properties to raise cash to wind up the estate. So this is another aspect linked to wills that we will maybe cover in future podcasts, but I'm just mentioning it to create high-level awareness. What I would like to say to the viewers is, if you do not have a will in place, or if you have a will that hasn't been reviewed in a long time, do consult your bank, a certified financial planner, or an attorney if that's your preference. Have your will drafted. They will explain a lot of the technical issues to you, things like what constitutes a valid will, what is the meaning of different definitions like executor, testator, testatrix, etc., and they will field any questions you have around the will. So please, I strongly urge you to have this put in place. And as Zweli said when we kicked off the podcast, you know, it's either something that you view as taboo or something that you see as important, valuable, beneficial, and something that you've got to put in place from a sense of responsibility, especially if you're married and especially if you have kids. And a final thing from my side, viewers, listeners, I'd like you to join me in congratulating Zweli and his wife Yonela on the arrival of their little baby boy, Zweli Leshle, and our Money Time podcast family is expanding. So congrats to you and the Mrs. Zweli, wishing the two of you and your family lots and lots of happy moments with the little one.
Well, thank you so much. You know, you just triggered the fact that I now need to revise my will, you know, because there's a child now in place.
Please
No,
do,
thank you so
Zweli,
much.
do right by your little boy.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nikki. And yeah, the little one is growing up, already having few days now. He's a very strong young boy. So yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. And for me, it's goodbye for tonight.
So thank you everyone for joining us. We uncertain what our next podcast topic's about, but I'm certain it would be something of great interest and value to you. Have a wonderful evening and happy Heritage Day. And enjoy your Heritage Day celebrations. Be safe, have fun. Good night.
Night.
Who's hot, who not? Tell me who rock, who sell out in the stores. You tell me who flop, who cop the blue drop, who jewels got blocks, who's mostly Dolce down to the two top. The same old pimp, Mace, you know ain't nothing changed but my limp. Can't stop till I see my name on the blimp. Guarantee a million sales, pull a level up. You don't believe in Harlem World, nigga, double up. We don't play around, it's a bet, lay it down. Niggas didn't know me 91, bet they know me now. I'm the young Harlem nigga with the Goldie sound. Can't no PD, niggas hold me down. Cooler, school me to the game, now I know my duty. Stay humble, stay low, blow like Hootie. True pimp, niggas spin no dough on the